How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk, guys. Today we're going to talk about recruitment to retention. In my opinion, it is one smooth transition, even though there may be two separate components. They do work in tandem or in partnership. Our guest today is going to be Russ Hamilton and Joe Pomponio. The reason why I wanted to have this dialogue is somewhere along this discussion, Russ mentioned to me about having a correctional officer apprentice program, something that he was introduced to when he entered the profession. And I thought that would be great for us to discuss in this dialogue as well, because I believe that right now we are going through a national crisis, and it's extremely important to balance both our efforts at recruitment and retention. Now, even though, as we're going to mention, we do see them as two separate things, they do work in partnership. And it's very important for us in leadership positions to understand how that partnership works. But real quick, before I bring on Russ and Joe, just want to let you know I got some books on the market. We have Inmate Manipulation Decoded. This book is available on Amazon, used for training all across the country. It really fills out that gap of pretty much get an understanding of the games the inmates play and how to avoid them. So if you guys don't have this book, please get that book. And for those who have been buying the book, thank you so much for your constant support, and keep putting those reviews on Amazon. Again, link to this is in the description. We also have these two books, which are published by Blue 360 Media, Lessons Learned While Working in the Prison, so How to Succeed in Corrections, and Tips for New Correctional Officers and Their Supervisors. So these books just have tons of passages written by myself, supported by other professionals in the field, and we discuss so many, I would go as far as saying principles, but just really good advice in how to survive and navigate through this career. This is more tactical. This is more just leadership side, just more of basically management of people. And then I have two other books that are coming out, done by the same publishing company, Blue 360 Media. One's going to be on leadership, which is very similar in fashion to these two. And another one's going to kind of have the same format of style as this. And it's going to be about dealing with unruly inmates. Title's still in the works. And those books will also be available by Blue 360 Media. So if you get all 5 of these books, that's going to be a hell of a, just good reference, just good things you can go to when you enter this profession if you have any questions. And again, all of these links are now in my description. But these two new books that were published by Blue 360 Media, they're also available on Amazon. I have the link to the Amazon link as well. But I know some people have been trying to order it, and it's been a little difficult. So in the meantime, you can still order from the Blue 360 link. And again, those links are also in the description. All right, let me get Russ. What's up, Russ?
Hey, Anthony. How's it going, sir?
Good, brother. Hey, do you mind introducing yourself to our audience, please?
Oh, not at all. My name is Russ Hamilton. I am a former and retired sergeant from California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. I've also been a senior juvenile correctional officer, and I currently work for a private company that does reentry and rehabilitation work for a local probation department and a local county jail, where I am a case manager.
And Russ, how's Keepers of Chaos?
So Keepers of Chaos on Facebook, I founded that, now I think it's like 5 or 6 years ago. And basically, we provide support and training and knowledge and history for everybody, that works in the correctional field, whether you have a badge or not.
Yes, and guys, remember, it's Keepers of Chaos. Chaos is spelled with a K, not with the CH. We have had people that are looking for it, have trouble finding it. It's KAOS. All right. Hey, Joe, what's up, brother?
What's happening, guys?
Hey, Joe, you mind introducing yourself, please?
Yes, sir. My name is Joe Pomponio. I'm a retired lieutenant from the Texas Department of Corrections, 29 years and 6 months. I'm currently working as an assistant jail administrator here in our local sheriff's department in the jail division, and a panel member here for Tier Talk.
Yes, and we love having Joe. We love having both of you. So, guys, it's going to be a good discussion. We're talking about basically from rookie to recruit. I'm sorry, I should have been from recruit to rookie. I'm going to fix that. Now I have it backwards. But basically, we're talking about basically from becoming a recruit to retention. And the reason why I said recruit to rookie is because the initial process is to get people in. And then once they go into that facility, it shifts from recruitment to retention. And as I said, I do think it's a continuum. But with that said, there are two noted differences in what the expectations may be. And I thought Russ explained it best when we were trying to record this earlier. So I'm actually going to go to Russ again. And Russ, can we explain this continuum from recruitment to retention, but also explain the different expectations of both, but how they do technically transition from one to the other. They're not meant to be treated in isolation, but rather in partnership.
Yeah. So if you just think about it this way, that recruitment and retention are basically two different things, but they are two sides of the same coin. There is a continuum between them and a relationship. And whereas, recruitment is all about the onboarding process. It's about getting people to get interested in the position. It's about, getting them excited about, becoming, part of a department or a particular facility where they can, come in and actually have a career. The retention part of it is doing things for those people that we've onboarded in a manner that gets them and keeps them invested in the process, makes them proud of what they do, provides them hopefully, a good living wage. There are problems out there in many parts of the country with that, but also that gives them the tools and equipment and the training and hopefully also the status to, actually decide that they want to stay with that department, that they have, upward mobility open to them, and that they feel that they can, be part of, a well-functioning, well-designed, well-oiled machine. Often it's not the case in corrections right now, and often, we're having troubles even staffing a single joint. But ideally, perhaps something, like an apprenticeship program could help with the retention part of it, could help also with the recruitment part, the idea that you get to go in and that you get to get training from the start, and that there's, a cohesiveness about it that puts you into a position where you actually start to learn what it means to be a proficient correctional professional.
Yeah, and I actually want to dive into that a little bit later because I want to kind of see if we can evolve that idea. That's why I'm very looking forward to this discussion, because I think in regards to the people that we now have to attract, which is a younger generation, I think there's a lot that recruitment has to deal with that's a lot different than recruiting in the past. And I think that even when they get to the facility, there's definitely a need for that apprentice program, but there's maybe a little bit of a caveat, a little shift that we can make in order to meet that newer need from that newer generation. Hey, Joe, any thoughts about the sorry, we lost Russ for a second. I hope he comes back. Hey, Joe, any thoughts about, obviously, right now, the need for recruitment and retention to be balanced?
Oh yeah, I mean, absolutely. They're both two aspects of utmost importance. It's important that we get them in the door, and it's important that we keep them. And how do we do that? Is we train them in the middle. Knowledge and education and training never stops. That's something that continues on. It did for me for the full 29 years and 6 months. Or there was something new every day that I learned. And we need to have a fluid recruitment process. We need to make sure that we're living up to our image. We need to make sure that we're standing behind everything that we teach during the recruiting stage once we bring them into the units as rookies. And we need to make sure that, that we're spending time with these rookies. We're keeping their attention. We're making them focused, and that, that we're giving them the tools and not the tips of the trade, but the tools and everything that they need in order to do the job and do the job, well. We can't just bring people in and not do anything with them afterwards. It serves no purpose, nor does it do any good. Even for the veterans, even though they're in veteran status, there's still things that they want to do. There's still things that they want to try. There's still things that they want to learn. And, recruits and rookies are no different. They always continue to search for, they hunger for that knowledge. They hunger for that chance. And, we need to make sure that we're giving them, ample opportunity to be able to do that.
Yeah. Now, guys, obviously, you're going to see an invested effort in recruitment at first. And I think that does help out with retention, even for the staff that have been there for a while, because we want to get the numbers in so we can get people ready to take the job, hopefully long term, and then hopefully that can alleviate some burnout, because our big thing is our staff in corrections nationally is just being burned out. The amount of hours that they have to put in, not knowing when they can go home. So, I mean, obviously the recruitment effort does bleed into the retention side, because the more people that you're able to bring in, the more they're able to alleviate that workload or that demand. And that actually is great, because then staff hopefully can have schedules that are more predictable and just they don't feel as burned out. But with that said, I want to start with recruitment first, okay? Because I think everything does filter through recruitment. Now recruitment has to go where they feel the biggest target is, and the biggest target is the younger generation. I mean, obviously, it is what it is. I mean, the younger generation's coming in, the millennials are going to start taking over, and eventually the X generation and the boomers are going to be kicked out. In corrections, I think we're starting to see the shift happen already. You're starting to see millennials take over the higher positions. You're starting to see the X generation starting to bleed out, and then you start seeing the Z generation coming in. And with that said, guys, recruitment is making a lot of adjustments to attract that newer generation. And I'm not going to say it's a softer side of corrections. I think I've been reading a lot on what really are those changes. And I'm not going to say it's the softer side. I'm going to say it's a more human side. So it's become a lot less tactical and more human. So basically the newer generation wants to connect to something that's authentic, that has value, that has purpose, and also something that makes them feel included. And so with that said, recruitment is got to do their best to speak that language. And believe it or not, a big part of recruitment efforts right now could also it can also be a more guided process, which means that the people that are coming in may expect more guidance throughout the recruitment side, throughout the academy side, and that does continue off once they get into the facility. So I'll start with Joe first and then Russ, but Joe, so as we see with recruitment right now, recruitment, I think at first has to make most of the adjustments. They have to promote a job that is exciting and also something that attracts the newer generation. And basically the recruitment has to speak their language. Now, with that said, whatever effort recruitment begins with, so in this case here, let's say it's a guided process. Let's say it's a process that promotes this profession as not so much the external benefits of having a good salary or just health benefits, whatever it is, a retirement plan, but more of what's the value of this job? What's the purpose? Are we connected in this job? Recruitment has to actually speak that language, and then that language has to eventually translate through the academy. So same effort, same process, and then has to also continue forth once they enter the facility. If at any point there's a disconnect between what's bringing these recruits in to when they finally get to the facility, you're going to start seeing a lot of the recruits not staying because the initial promises of what got them into the profession are not being carried out throughout the process of, I would go ahead and say, from the academy all the way to, entering the facility. What's your thoughts on that, Joe?
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, recruitment's probably one of the toughest positions to be in. It's one of the toughest things to get off the ground. It's one of the toughest things to maintain. You got to make sure that recruitment, your recruitment department is filled with people who are high value, high energy, high capacity, and has a lot of patience and tolerance. They got to be able to go out there and sell the dream. Being able to choose your target audience is not an easy thing, especially in this day and age. 20, 30 years ago, we were recruiting, we were going to military bases, we were going to police departments, we were gathering a list of people who are soon to retire from law enforcement or the military. And those were the people that we were seeking out because they're already, the majority of them were already paramilitary style. And, we were a paramilitary agency, therefore it was a good fit. Now it's more along the lines of technology and, being able to appease what intrigues them now. We're going to high schools, we're going to workforce commissions, we're going to all these places trying to recruit target audiences. And we need to make sure that our recruitment departments are, number one, the kind of people that you want to promote a positive image that are out in the public on a constant basis. You want to make sure that these are people that are going to stand by the agency and what they call ride for the brand. You want to make sure that they have definite personal skills and good delivery, and be able to find that niche to keep people intrigued at the recruit stage, because these are the people that we're trying to pull in, and we need to make sure that everything that we're doing and everything that we're saying is fact and truthful. We don't want anybody to be misled. We don't want people to come in and buy the dream, and then they get to a unit and nobody has anything to do with them. And they're like, okay, so where the hell is all this, this training and this positivity and teamwork? And, so we need to make sure that we have the right people in a recruiting position, because, like I said, recruiting is probably one of the toughest positions to be in, because you're basically not only selling yourself, you're selling the agency too.
Yeah, and if I get Russ, hey Russ, what do you think are some of the shifts from your your experience, but just also maybe just in where we're headed today? What are some of the shifts that recruitment has to make that may be a little bit different than what was done in the past? And if they are making these shifts, how do these shifts eventually have to translate down to once the rookie finally enters the facility?
Well, I hate to say this, but I think that one of the things that we've seen is we've seen recruitment trying to cast a wider and wider net, and to try and get anybody and everybody with a pulse involved, because there's been this manpower crisis for so long. And I think that it hasn't necessarily, served our purpose correctly. So, I think the things that that recruitment should be looking at is to try and target the segments of the population that are already interested in doing the kind of things that happen in corrections, and not just, trying to say, hey, we're going to take anybody and everybody. Hey, you know what? If you can get your record expunged, come on in, let's drop the minimum age down. And so I think that we're kind of doing a disservice in that way, but I think that we could do better if we targeted, the right demographics of people, those who are maybe a little bit more mature, that are finally ready, at that break point of like maybe 23, 24, where they're ready to go from having a job to having a career. But then, when we talk about retention, you have to be doing those things that actually look like a career in order to, keep those people invested. So I think it's kind of a balancing act. I give a talk here and there that I call my step talk, where I talk about the things that retention should be doing, but it's also a part of things that can be pointed out by recruitment for that. And STEP, it's just my acronym. I talk about S. S is for status. I believe that every correctional officer should, start at that point where they have the status of a peace officer, someone who's been through that academy and has the skills and trainings necessary to own that title of correctional peace officer. I was lucky in the two different badges that I wore over my career. I always had that. The second thing beyond the S, the T, is training. I see so many times where, people, they come right into the department and they don't go to the academy for a year, and it's kind of this ad hoc thing going on. And I think that that's not good either. I think we should be providing the kind of training that's exciting for people to come in, so that they feel that, they have a level of proficiency before they step across that threshold. And then E, I talk about that all the time, is equipment. I talk to officers all over the nation and in other countries who are not well equipped. They don't have chemical agents, or some of them don't even have handcuffs, or some of them aren't allowed to carry handcuffs and keys at the same time. And they certainly don't have, 40 millimeter projectiles and tasers and protective vests, sometimes not radios. So we need to bring that along. I mean, this is the 21st century, people. We can get serious about having the right equipment all the time. And we shouldn't have to worry about, well, that looks too militaristic. I mean, we're in a serious field here where it's, life and death perhaps every single day. And then last but not least, that P, pay that is commensurate with the training that we get, pay that is commensurate with the responsibilities that we have as a peace officer, and pay, that recognizes, hey, that equipment that we have there is for a reason, because there's an element of risk involved. And I think that those things together from both sides of that coin, from the recruitment to the retention, could well serve us. That will attract people. People can get excited about, being in an environment that's made safer by the type of equipment that we have, by the type of training that we have, by the status that we're required to have and the responsibility that goes along with it. I certainly don't think that every, Gen Z or the like out there, the millennial is, worthless and not willing to take risks and not willing to, try and, take on awesome responsibilities. I just think that, we need to sell it to the right demographics.
Yeah, and I agree. I think right now, obviously, we're in desperation mode. So at this point here, quantity may look to supersede quality, which is not how it should be. I think a lot of people, when they look to recruit, they justify success by numbers, and that's really not going to be successful long term. That's just superficial. I think if you, like Russ said, if you strategically position people, let's say if I'm a recruitment and we're at a college, why not maybe be more specific and get into the criminal justice departments and just talk about the profession without the effort to recruit. Just talk, answer questions, without the effort to go ahead and automatically connect to a recruitment. It's like, no. Eventually, once you start talking well enough, people will feel something and may wind up, here's my card. If you're ever interested in any more questions or follow-ups, go ahead and hit me up. I think that there's a lot of impact that could be made when you're talking to the students who are extremely young, who have questions. And once you can create that initial impact before they get counter-influenced by misinformation, they may see a better way to the profession that no one's ever shown them before, and they wind up looking for you again, specifically. And I know that for a fact. So recruitment obviously may, for many people, have to have someone that has a face to it. Like when you go to the colleges and you start connecting to these younger students, especially those that are in the criminal justice department, and you start keeping them motivated and you start, selling them the dream that I truly do believe in, then they may wind up wanting to speak to you again. And then that's your chance to really engage them into more about what the profession may be doing for you or what it could do for them. But I love what Russ said, because it really is strategic in that effort. I mean, and the reason why is this, and maybe we'll go with Russ first, is that you want momentum to go in the right direction. So it may be a little bit longer to do it strategically, but at least I know when it finally picks up, and takes off, I know the momentum is going in the right direction, because I was very careful with who we selected, and we started the direction here. And in this case here, let's say the criminal justice department. But if you're just sitting there going out anywhere, and you go ahead and just look for the numbers, yeah, you may get momentum, but the momentum is all over the place, and it's not really bringing you back anybody that truly is of quality. It's just bringing you back numbers. Would you agree with that, Russ?
Yeah, a flurry of activity does not mean that you're actually progressing toward anything. That whole kind of, frenetic, just, makeshift stuff where there's just a buzz doesn't really get us anywhere. And so, we should be looking at this. And it's been really disappointing to me along the way to see that, so many departments don't recognize what's important. And they certainly seem to mistake, all this, activity and trying to get more people in and casting a wider net and all that stuff as being positive when it's really a net negative, in my opinion. I mean, why throw away all these good training dollars, after people who are just going to come in and ho hum it rather than, people who are going to come in and stick to it. And we can have people stick to it more if we hire from, the right categories of people. And on top of that, after they're onboarded, we provide them with real, true, status training, equipment, and pay.
Yeah, and I want to add something too, guys. This is for people that are doing recruitment. Just a thought that I like to just put out there is that you could make an effort to hit the masses. And you know what? This is the areas you want to hit because they're hot. And, a lot of people go that route. But you got to realize something. Not everybody is going to believe in what you're trying to sell. You're not going to be able to have influence over the masses. So as you're trying to get maybe out of 100, you're trying to get 5, if you're lucky, you're going to have 95 people that are going to counter influence your attempt because they're not buying in. But if you could probably have stronger focus, and instead of going for 100, go for 5 strong potentials, then you have better chance because the influence may maintain or may keep that momentum in your direction. Because I know a lot of people want the numbers. So what do? They go to, try to hit everybody at once, but they don't realize they're also going to be going against people that hate this profession. Probably more so than they are about people who are interested in this profession. So here you are, you sell this bridge, that you do believe in, but in their mind, they don't. And the moment you leave, even if you had 5 that were a potential, the other 95 turned them around. So I say when you go in with a target. You maybe speak to the class, and if there's maybe a group of them that are asking more questions, those are the people you may want to focus on, may want to give your card to, and then you bring those 5 back in. I don't care about the 100, but I got the 5. And now I'm able to create a bit of an influence with them, and I'm not too much worried about the counter influence of another 95 who really weren't interested in anything that you were providing. So I think, as I said, if you go to the schools or whatnot, you give talks, not an effort to recruit, but just an effort to give people an understanding of the profession. You look to see who are the most engaged, but engaged for the right reasons. And those may be the people you want to give a card to and come back and invest in one-on-one. I mean, I know people are like, well, Gangi, it's going to take forever to get those numbers. Yeah, but eventually you will. And the numbers will be quality numbers and not numbers based on desperation for quantity. What's your thoughts on that, Joe, about being wary of that counter influence?
Yeah, and I agree with Russ. We've taken our drag nets and we've cast them so wide that we're pulling quantity over quality. And the problem with that is if you don't get the quality up front, you're going to lose them in the end. Just because a vehicle has a full tank of gas and a motor that revs, unless you aim the car and put it in a gear, it's not going to go anywhere. You can rev it all day long. And with this, it's no different. We used to, 20, 30 years ago, of course, I'm going back to the day, our jobs were, we didn't have all the technology and the internet and everything that we have now. It was by word of mouth. A lot of the people that worked there, told, certain friends about the job because they thought, deep in their mind, because of the training they've had, that certain individuals would be a good fit in that job. And, we lowered our standards to the point that we're not making anybody push for the job. I had to push for my job. I had to go through a stringent background. I had to go through a stringent PT program. I had to go through a stringent questionnaire, all of this stuff. And, I actually had to work to get the job, which made me push harder. And we're not doing that anymore because we're casting our net out so wide that we're literally dragging people in off of their feet in the door, and we're putting them in a classroom environment, and we're expecting them to understand and swallow everything that we teach them. Like I said, our target audiences are important where you direct your focus. It doesn't do you to bring 100 people in if only 15 of those 100 were focused and you get them from the recruit stage to the rookie stage, and 75 to 80 of them quit. It really didn't do us no good. We wasted funds on training, salary, educational items, classrooms, buildings, whatever we spent our budget money on in order to get this recruitment program going. And we really haven't done ourselves any good. Yeah, we got 15 good people out of it, but we wasted more of our resources on losing the 70, the 85 than we did keeping the 15. And, I think we need to get back to a more stringent job requirement, hiring practices. I think it worked better when people actually had to work to get the job versus us working to get them into the job. To me, it made a big difference in the world because, we targeted people who were truly interested in the criminal justice careers or correctional careers, law enforcement careers. We were targeting people that had interest, had questions, and were intrigued by the profession, but really didn't know nothing about it. But yet we still spent the time to make sure that we pulled them into the fold and made them part of that family. We need, I can't stress it enough that we need to get back to a point where we need to quit worrying about hiring people in masses, like unemployment offices and things like that. We've gotten so desperate. We're going to unemployment offices and we're targeting single parents, people that are already having a hard enough time trying to function in life. Now we're gonna force a single parent to come into an environment and leave their child for 12 hours, at an 8-hour daycare facility and pay 4 hours worth of overtime to these daycares just so we can keep this person. And, we find that, a lot of these employees are struggling more after getting the job than getting to the job. And that's what we're trying to combat and prevent. We need and want people that are actually intrigued by the job, or, actually have their heart in the job and are capable of understanding, comprehending, and being able to do the job. It does, like I said, it does us no good to cast a wider net and lower our standards if we're not going to keep them anyway.
Yeah. And guys, we've discussed this on the show. I've even discussed this in books. Recruitment's effort, as long as it's, like we said, strategic, and they're really looking for quality over quantity. And again, I think quality comes in someone's potential to grasp the understanding of the job. So I'm not even expecting someone to come in, obviously, and know everything about the job, because that's impossible. I didn't know that. Neither did Joe, neither did Russ. But we have to look at someone and understand, do they have potential to grow into the role? I'm not expecting, when I talk to them, perfect answers, but are they resourceful? Can they be innovative? Do they understand the type of work they're getting into? Can they be committed? Are they going to be invested? And with that said, that's a lot for recruitment to try to figure out. I think the number one thing that recruitment is looking for is the potential for people to, one, want to stay in this profession, treat it as a career, but also, create a positive impact in this profession, do what's correct. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense. We're losing Russ. Oh, here, let me, so he situates himself. There we go. We got him back. I think when we talk about recruitment to retention, and as I said, for me, it's recruitment when you're trying to get them in. But once they get into that facility, the ball gets passed off to, hey, this is now a retention effort. Now I want to go with Russ first and then go with Joe, but with today's day and age, knowing that we are dealing with a younger generation that requires, as I said, more attention, more guidance. I do believe they got to have purpose. They got to see this as opportunity as well, which means, and we'll get to this in a little bit, but it means that, yes, it's a career, but they like to move up really quick. And it's like, well, it may not be they're trying to move up to achieve status. It could be they need to progress towards something that has purpose, that has value, which we'll get into. But with that said, from recruitment to retention, so basically we bring this person in, we get them through the academy or whatever, however your structure may work at your facility. And once you hand them over to the facility, for me, I don't care if it's 1% in the right direction. I want the person to be in the right direction. I'm going to take the ball. You gave the person to me from recruitment. I'm now going to take the ball and I'm going to do what I can to cultivate. All I ask is that you go ahead and make sure the person is headed in the right direction. As I said, I don't care if it's a small percent. I mean, I would love to get a big percent, but we're not going to get a big percent. I just want 1% in the right direction. That 1% could be that spark of potential, which means that I don't have to transform somebody. I just got to cultivate them. I think a lot of times what people expect from recruitment and the academy is that you're going to give me a recruit that's 100%. And that means that I don't really have much to do except teach them maybe a little bit of the technical part of the job. And I don't think that's the case. I think that we, on the retention side, should expect that we're going to get recruits that are going to come our way with just maybe direction. You know, we know they're going in the right direction, but they're probably going to only be at 1 or 2%, which means the bulk of the work now is going to have to be on us. But Russ, do you think, especially at this day and age, that when a recruit travels down and becomes that rookie and goes day one in your facility, that you're going to get a rookie that's 100% ready to go?
There's no chance of that. No chance whatsoever. You know, it's, I don't think that people realize the skill sets that are needed to do this job. You know, not just at an adequate level, but at a high level. It takes years and years and years of practical experience in order to bring someone through that. And that's why, you know, I think that the emphasis that we need to put on training has to do more than we've done in the past, and we have to get better at it. And I've seen some things, you know, happen with regard to this. You know, just even a few years ago, you would almost never hear about, you know, FTOs being involved in the process. But there's more that we could do all the way along, in my opinion, that would really, you know, bolster, you know, the confidence, the work ethic, and the abilities of all of our correctional officers. And I think that, you know, too often we look at the bottom line and say, oh, you know what, training costs too much. And that's simply not true. We need to pay a lot more attention to that. I hope I didn't get too far off topic there.
No, it's right. And I want to mention something. Whoever recruitment eventually winds up passing the ball to academy, or, you know, it's going to be different for, you know, jails, different facilities, different agencies. But let's say the trajectory is from recruitment to academy to the facility. Let's say that's the trajectory, even though I know that's not going to always be the case. I know in some cases it's recruitment to the facility back to the academy. But I prefer, got to invest the money up front. I'm sorry, but I prefer recruitment academy to facility, because once I have them in my facility, I expect them to be trained, both for liability, but I need them. I need to be dependent on them. So if you're doing it the other way, I was never really a big fan of that. But with that said, when you get it from recruitment, let's say this is the trajectory, recruitment to academy to day one rookie, I think that people that are going to be receiving that recruit, the people that are going to be now embracing this individual into making them, you know, part of the family and introducing them into the practical side of the job. Okay, you've learned all this, now welcome to the facility. They need to be involved, as Russ said, in some level of the recruitment effort and understanding who's coming their way, so they could shift. Because at the end of the day, you can't expect this whole process at the beginning to be guided and, you know, meet the needs of what the newer generation needs. And then when you eventually hand them over to the facility or pass them off, you expect now for the rookie to make all the adjustments to meet the needs of the facility. Sad to say, it's not going to happen. If you want that rookie to be included, I know this may be tough for people to hear, but me and Russ just taught this recently. The adjustment or the effort to include the individual, does not come from the individual coming to you. It comes from you embracing them, which means that if you're connected to what recruitment is doing and how they are selling the profession, how they are getting the recruits, also, the efforts in dealing with the recruits, how guided the process is, you can't just all of a sudden, when that person gets to the facility, forget about this guided process or forget about the dream that they're selling or whatever it is that brings them in. You have to connect to that and keep that moving forward. Would you agree with that, Joe?
Yeah, and one thing is the recruitment department needs to keep good communication with, the unit level administrations to let them know, hey, this is what we're teaching in the academy. This is what we're doing to get these people in the door. This is what we told them is going to happen when they get there. And, once we get them through the process, we rely on the administration. We rely on the employees of the facility. We rely on all of them to kind of carry that tradition on in order, to be able to retain them. Again, it doesn't do any good to cast this big net out, looking for, a big pool of candidates if we make empty promises that we're not going to follow through with on the back end during the rookie phase. I don't know about you guys, but there was no recruitment when I signed on with TDC. I sought out the job, and I sought out the job because of the fact that, one of my friends was already, in TDCJ doing the job, and he knew what kind of mentality I had. He knew what kind of person I was. And he kind of approached me about it and told me, I think you would be a good fit. And he had me go on a unit tour with him. I stayed with him, up in North Texas for a few days. God bless his soul. He passed away of COVID, but he took me for a tour of the unit, and I was basically hooked from that point on. And I did everything within my power to seek out that job and do what I needed to do to get on board. And I think we lost a lot of that in transition going to a recruitment phase where we put people in positions to go out and sell the job like used vehicles. I think it was better suited when, one employee or two employees from each unit had friends or acquaintances that were, either ex-military or ex-PD or whatever. They might have been looking for something else to do in life that, gave them some direction and meaning. And, that one person would, tell them, what, I think you would be a good fit in our agency, in our facility. You have the right mindset. And we've lost a lot of that in translation. We're trying to sell it to 100 people all at one time. And, not all of that transitions into the rookie phase, and the administrations on, a lot of these facilities, like in Texas in general, we have 100 facilities. Actually, we're back up to 103 facilities now. And, the recruitment department really never did a good job of keeping the unit administration in the loop of, what we're teaching, what we're selling, what we're promising, what we're telling them is going to happen. They pretty much just relied that information to an FTO officer and made it the FTO officer's mission to, embrace these rookies when they hit the facilities instead of everybody embracing them.
And you know what's great about what you're saying. So when we go back to that recruitment side, let's say we're talking to the students. When you introduce the profession, there's a lot of telling, a lot of, this is what we got going on, blah, blah, blah. But then when you start finding the people that are asking questions and you start trying to really answer their questions based on, what they're asking from whatever perspective it is that they're trying to ask those questions from, that's how you start to get early investment. As long as the questions are geared in that right direction, because at first you could initially tell people, but you can't automatically expect that's going to get you people that are invested. No, you got to literally, mention stuff and then eventually feedback, from them answering questions. And then you kind of know a little bit more about the individual by the questions that they're asking. And it's great to know that when you go to pass off the ball to someone at the facility, they're aware of what those questions are. They're aware of what this person expects to see from this profession. And again, you're not selling lies. I know earlier I meant to say sell a bridge, and maybe that may have came out wrong. You're not. You're finding something that they connect to, and then doing your best to figure out how that can apply within the facility once they get brought in there. And I think, to me, that is very big with the generation that we're looking to have come in. And I got to add something too. If you know that this generation that's got to come in, the moment they come in, it could alleviate the mandatory and the overtime and all this other stuff. They should, like Joe said, they should be welcome like you wouldn't believe. What do you need? You want me to get you a cup of coffee? I mean, what do you want me to do to keep you guys here? Because at the end of the day is if we're bringing, if let's say if recruitment is going out there and they finally get people through the process, and it's like, hey, this isn't perfection, but this is what I'm able to give you, but I do feel there's hope, because again, I'm bringing you people that have potential. They're not perfect, just people that have potential. And this is where I feel they have their potential in. Once that facility gets them, that facility's got to take that ball and take investment and ownership in who's being sent their way. And once they do get to that facility, even if let's say that rookie did have potential coming in, but for some reason they lose interest, that's not a recruitment problem. That's somewhere along the line, that's a retention problem, because I like to think, if I'm in recruitment, one thing I would like to think that you need to recognize, you need to see is potential. And you know exactly what your facility needs. So you know exactly what direction that potential needs to be in. If you notice that someone has potential and, basically they, meet the standards of, okay, you know what, this girl or guy can go to this facility, and I know that if you give them to the right person, they could take them further, then we did our part on this side. Now you have to go ahead and do your part in helping this person reach that greatest potential. And the first two steps in regards to that, and it's basically from the study of Dr. Timothy Clark, is going to be the effort to include the individual, which is on the receiving facility, and the effort to provide them an environment where it's safe for them to learn and basically develop into that potential. And both those things are dependent on the facility, on the location that they're going to. But I want to ask something, guys, because I want to get into this apprentice program, but I want to ask one more thing, and I'll start with Joe and then Russ, kind of like to alternate a little bit. But when we talk about potential, and when we talk about kind of handing over that recruit to that facility, what are some of the things reasonably that you would expect for recruitment and the academy, if that's the filter, to provide you, like, let's say, the final product of who this individual is when they get to the facility? What are some of the things that you expect, just minimally? And don't forget, you got to take into context the fact that it is a newer generation. It's a generation that is going to be guided into this profession, not like we were. They're going to be guided into this profession. So with that said, you're not going to expect someone that's, for example, 100% ready to work on their own. You can't expect that, especially if the process was all guided. And that's why sink or swim doesn't work either. We're guiding you straight through, and then when you get to the facility, you're on your own. So what would you expect, Joe? Minimal. So if the process is recruitment academy to the facility, so let's say I think that's the proper filter. In context with the newer generation, what kind of individual do you expect to be sitting in front of you on day one, where you can then recognize that I can work with this individual, or, hey, recruitment did a bad job and this is why?
Well, when it comes to them handing the reins over to the unit level people after, the recruits become rookies, the things I always wanted to know was about the individuals themselves. I wanted to know about their personality traits. Were they outgoing? Were they reclusive? Did they participate in the class, in the discussions? Did they keep to themselves like introverts? I also want to know what their pros and cons are. I want to know what their strengths and weaknesses are, because we're always gonna exploit the strengths, but I need to know what weaknesses I need to work on with them in order to get them up to a standard, a certain standard. And I need to know, I've always taken interest in my staff. I knew their first names. I knew if they were married, how many kids they had. I always, there was a lot of things that I knew about my employees, and, I also knew what their strengths and weaknesses were. And that doesn't matter. It didn't matter if that was from the rookie stage or the veteran stage. Everybody's going to have pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses. And I expect good, solid communication from the recruitment department when they hand the recruits over to us as rookies. I want some background on these people. I want to know what makes them tick. I want to know what makes them put one foot in front of the other. What can I do to help them further their strengths and further their weaknesses? And I think it's imperative that good communication between the two it's a must, because when you can take a person from a recruit stage into a rookie stage and they come to your facility and you already know things about them, you can kind of point that out right off the top, and they're like, well, how do you know this? You don't, this is my first day here. My recruitment department kind of filled in the blanks for me and kind of, told me, where you excel, where you don't excel, where you need some help, where, some things that I can help you, better yourself in your profession. Good communication is key.
Yeah, you know what, Joe, you're so spot on right now, and I can't wait to get Russ's thoughts, because what's funny, when during the interview process, sometimes we'll ask questions to someone who's never been in the profession, something very specific about how they would handle something in the profession, and then they get judged if they kind of don't hit the technical. I mean, even if they get some of their actions correct, they don't hit the technical. And I always tell people, listen, most of the time, what you're going to deal in corrections to some level. Like I remember when I was a waiter, I had unruly guests or unruly customers. So when they would ask a question that involved conflict, but they put it in context of a prison, I would take ownership of the question by saying, you know what, I've never worked in a prison before, but with that said, I do have an effort. I do know how to problem solve. This is what I would do to problem solve. Now, granted, it's not going to be as extreme as working in a correctional environment, but you could at least know my momentum is headed in the right direction. I love what you mentioned, Joe, about looking at the skills that aren't so tactically proficient in regards to the context of corrections, but providing a good start. Like when you said, are they introvert or extrovert? That matters. You're going to be dealing with inmates. I really don't want extreme introverts. I do want people that are going to, engage. Like I know Russ is a big thing on engage and talking to those inmates, getting to know who they are. But now if I got someone that's been quiet in his class, or she's been quiet all day, that may be a concern for me, when that's really just something about who they are that now has to find a way to fit inside this prison wall. And that itself may not be a good fit. So I like how you recognize potential by just the way the person may carry themselves outside of the context of working in a correctional facility. What's your thought, Joe? I mean, Russ, there's a lot here. So again, you're getting somebody delivered to you. I know Russ. I know for 100%, Russ loves to put their hands on people and cultivate them. So Russ knows he's not getting someone that is going to have extreme technical skill. But Russ, where do you look for when it comes to engaging potential to reach that?
For me, I think it's, just doing everything you can to get them as involved in the process as you can, taking them under your wing and, showing them the ropes, telling them, what's going on, and going on from the perspective, not just of, hey, what's actually going on that you can see, but the things that are going on that they can't see, the things that are going on that they can't be expected to see in that moment. The last adult prison that I was at, we were a teaching prison in the respect that we used to get the academy cadets coming in all the time, and it always irked me because what our administrators would do is they'd say, "Oh, good, we've got these guys here. Let's do mass searches." And, my point to them is, these people are going to have a chance to do mass searches for the rest of their careers. Why are we putting them into a position where that's all that we're doing. Let's get them out there, to see how we're feeding a meal, to see how we're, taking an emergency count, put them in a position to see, what we're going to do. We're probably, today we might have a couple fights out here, and let's show them that. And so I think that, we have to really have people that, have an understanding of what the brand new recruits, the brand new cadets need in the way of training. And I think that a lot of places, maybe even all the places, have failed to some degree in that by not paying enough attention to it. And we really do need to pay attention to it. There's so many more things that could be done. And I understand, once again, talking about the flurry of activity, because, you have this, that, and the other thing besides training and retention and things like that. But we do that at our own peril, because these are people that we want not only to bring along in the training process, but we want to actually use the training process to cement the bonds between them and the more experienced people, because that unifying bond will actually help in retention. When a person feels that they are part of something that's bigger than themselves, or that has at least a noble idea or a noble terms of service, because what we do, make no mistake, is all about actually, public safety. We can't afford to turn the wolves loose out there in the public of the sheep, and that's a noble cause. I really believe that it is. At least it's the one that we've settled on within our culture and within our nation. And so we should be feeding that all we can by bringing these people along. And I think that that's a powerful principle to understand, that if we take them under our wings, if we sell them on the vision that we have with regards to public safety, they will feel and understand and know their own value. And a person that knows their own value is more likely to stay.
Yeah, and guys, I love what we're saying here, because technically, ultimately, if we could just sum this part of the dialogue up, if you give me someone that's headed in the right direction, I'll help them get to their destination. That's my job. And if at any point that I can't, I'm not going to go ahead and fall back and say, well, that was recruitment's fault. No, you gave me somebody. Fortunately, they couldn't get there. Maybe my fault, maybe their fault, but it definitely wasn't recruitment's fault. If there sometimes, reality hits in on the prison, and the recruit, just when they become the rookie, it's not what they think, and they put the brake, and you're trying to keep the car moving, and they don't want to move, and eventually it's like, you know what, they got to go. But having said that, all we expect is for someone to be, in that right direction, and then again, we'll try our best to cultivate them, get them where they got to be. But if they don't make it, it's no longer blaming recruitment. It could be just something here that just didn't work. Maybe the reality of the job. That definitely is not something that they're going to see until they do it in day one. Now, there's something I want to discuss. Now, this is going to cross into what me and Russ touched on a while ago. When you get this newer generation, the newer generation has to feel that they're progressing towards something. I think that's a really big thing for them. Me and Russ did a class recently in which that was discussed. And it's funny because they may have all these ambitions, and a lot of people may think that, these newer Gen Z's people, they want something within a year. And it may be so. Social media, all they see is outcomes, and they compare outcomes. But when you ask them, why they want that, it really doesn't have much to do with the function of the job that they're trying to do. Like, so if it's more about, in some cases, it could be superficial, it could be about status, or in some cases, some of them actually want to create a bigger impact, and they feel the higher you go, the more authority you may have in an effort to do that, or the more freedom you may have, which ain't always the case. I'll tell you that right now. But with that said, that is what they believe. So when you have someone that says, yeah, I want to be this within a year, and it's like, wow, that takes a few years to even think about that as an option. When you ask them, well, why do you want to be this function or whatever it is, this higher level, they'll give you something about impact and purpose. And then what your job is now to take what they're doing in the moment, the job that they're doing in the moment, and try to translate that into that higher purpose, and what we call that is task significance. It's basically letting them know that the individual work that they're doing does connect to a bigger picture. And I want to add something, and this is what's going to go into Russ's story, and then I want to touch on something that's more of a pioneer discussion that I don't think's been done before. But with that said, that's why a program like a correctional apprentice program or a good FTO program matters. But remember, it's got to be people that believe in the work. It's got to be people that believe, just in what their position's about. It's got to be people that have also good influence. I mean, I noticed something, guys. You could have someone that's a field training officer who may believe in all the things they're trying to accomplish, but they have no influence in the facility to carry it out. So having said that, they may be next to a rookie, but they're not strong enough to keep the rookie engaged, because at any moment, the person themselves is just doesn't have influence. So whatever you're trying to push in, this field training officer doesn't have enough influence to defend those changes or what's needed for the rookie. So you got to get that rookie handed off to someone who, one, understand and believes in the work that's being done. So this is probably going to be Russ and Joe, as I'm explaining. This fits you guys, but someone that believes in the work, loves the job, knows how to connect to the individual. But another avenue that should be mentioned is that they have influence with the senior officers as well. Because if they don't, the transition becomes a lot harder for the rookie, because they're not going to be able to, connect with the senior staff unless you have that FTO there trying to bridge that gap, because there is a big gap between, what that rookie is going to be expecting and what the senior officers are going to be willing to give. And the FTO, that correctional apprentice or whatever, the person overseeing the apprentice, not the apprentice, but the opposite of the apprentice, the professional. What are they called, Russ? The opposite of apprentice, the journeyman.
The journeyman. Yeah. Journeyman.
Yeah. The journeyman. So let's call. They're the ones that got to bridge that gap. So that journeyman has to have credibility, both with the rookie and both with the senior staff, to bridge that gap, and that will help the rookie feel more included. Because if there's ever any conflicts about what they're expecting between themselves and senior staff, you got that good balanced FTO bridging that gap and then keeping the direction moving forward. That's why you got to make sure that you're giving these people over to people of influence. Now, with that said, I want to kind of go backwards now and talk about Russ's experience when he entered the profession back in, I believe, 1989. And I want to talk about this correctional officer apprentice thing. And also, Russ, as you're explaining it, maybe you could talk a little bit about how it's different than what we would see today as a field training officer would provide.
So in my introduction to the way this came about, was the very first iteration of the, oh crap. Hold on just a second.
We got you, Russ. We're here.
Okay. I'm sorry that I had a technical glitch there. The very first iteration of the apprenticeship program in CDC was, I think it was maybe just a few academies before me. It might have even been our academy. But the idea behind it was to really up the professionalism of well, see, how do I put this? It's to up the professionalism of the title, because what we had going on at that time is we were correctional peace officers, which meant that, we had a higher call to duty. It meant that we were getting paid more and more. And the idea was to have some kind of structure within the bounds of what people were doing to make sure that we became well-rounded. I really feel that first iteration of it, at least from my perspective, kind of missed the mark, because it was a little bit perfunctory in the fact that, you just filled out what you had done in your position, and there were like several categories of things that you were doing. It was maintaining safety and security. It was report writing. It was supervising inmates on their job sites. It was search and escort of inmates. It was also, some things to do with, some other things that we were doing. And so based on all that, what would happen is once you accrued enough hours in each of those categories, and it usually took about 2 years, then at that point there, you were then a journeyman. The iteration that they have of it now, I can't really say with certainty, how much they're adhering to those things. But they have changed it somewhat. And some of the things that they've changed, have been that they now have a field training sergeant that's kind of in charge over the apprentices and makes sure that they're getting the right number of hours in with the things that they're supposed to be doing, and that they coordinate that. Also, one of the things that happens is when you first get to your institution brand new out of the academy, is you have a certain number of hours that you're supposed to do job shadowing it. I believe is what they call it, from someone that I talked to about this. And in that job shadowing, you're put with a senior officer, hopefully, and they're supposed to show you the ropes. Now, whether that's actually happening out there right now, I'm retired, and so even though I keep track of a lot of things that go on, that's kind of something that's a specialty. But I think that the model that they've got, I don't know. I can't actually, give an opinion as to how good it is or isn't, but it's certainly something that could be looked at. And I think that within all of these models, if there are any other ones out there, we could certainly look to tweak it and make it better all the time. What they're actually doing with it at this point in time, I couldn't tell you, but I do know that, it's better than just deciding, hey, we bring a bunch of bodies in and, everybody just, kind of do your best. And, if you turn out good, fine. If you drown and don't make it, fine. Having some FTO officers that might be, just, somebody's favorite. And that's why they've got the job of FTO, and they run willy nilly and there's no structure. And I'm not saying that all places are like this, but I've seen where it is an issue, is not something that, lends itself toward doing the things that we're talking about in this very video, which is, of course, retention. If you want retention on people, you have to provide that training, and they have to feel that it's worthwhile, and they have to feel that it's being done in a professional manner, and that it's going to be effective, and that it's going to make their job safer. So those are the things that I do know about the current form of it. There's, of course, websites where you can read about it online, and it kind of breaks down the structure. There are certain offices that are, or sub offices that are dedicated in each institution to overseeing the process of handling the apprentices and making sure that they matriculate toward that journeyman title, as it were. And so I hope that kind of gives you an idea of what it's about. But like I said, in the original iteration, it was not well structured, in my experience, but it did have the benefits of having us keep track of what it was that we were doing. So that, hey, if you're doing, security and transport on an inmate, and you have to have, I forget, it was like 250 hours of that or something like that, you would make sure that you were getting that instead of just that never being addressed, because you could end up just doing jobs where there was never any transportation of inmates. So it did provide for a little bit more well-rounding of all the different skill sets that you need.
Yeah, and guys, we touched on this, during this discussion, but basically it's, who am I passing to the, to the facility, but also who am I passing them to? Again, we want people that are bought in, that believe, that, aren't looking to just, hey, give me the rookie so I can have an easier day. I'll put them in a shitty post and not be alongside them when they're going through the motions. Again, and the reason why you want to be alongside them is because you got to show them significance, which I'll get to. Significance in the mundane tasks at first. Hey, Joe, real quick, you familiar with anything in TDCJ, like something related to like a maybe a correctional apprentice program, or maybe a more advanced FTO?
Yeah, well, I mean, we have in place what they call a mentorship program. Once they go through the academy, they come to a unit and they do 2 weeks of what they call with the FTO officer. They learn the layout of the unit, they learn the different departments, they learn, they start to learn the building schedule, what's supposed to be done during mass movements, patch searches, all the unit level based things. And once they get past that, when they get assigned to a shift, they're assigned to a veteran officer for 2 weeks. And they are with that officer for the full 2 weeks on every duty post that we put them on. And it's up to that veteran officer to teach them everything, all the job duty aspects for that specific job post and, things of that nature. So, I mean, it's pretty similar. The verbiage, I'm sure, probably differs, but the concept is very much the same. Once they get done, with the 2 weeks of mentorship with the veteran officer on the shift that they're assigned to, then they get the training wheels kicked off. They get to a duty post. We try to keep the mentor officer somewhere close by in a duty post within that same area in case they have any questions, something that the mentor can kind of keep an eye on from a distance, but still give them their full authority to run their duty post. And, the mentor can kind of provide feedback to the shift supervisors. Hey, he's doing a good job. He's doing his ins and outs on time. He's running the day room just fine. His counting techniques are on point. He just needs some help in, delivering lay-ins or delivering mail, or, maybe finding his little groove on his time management skills to get everything done, in accordance with the building schedule, during his shift. But, that process is pretty integral because, supervisors nowadays, let's face it, they're so bowed up in paperwork and so bowed up in administrative bullshit that they don't get a chance to actually walk around to the duty post, as often as they should or are required. And, therefore they rely on these veteran officers to provide them with solid, truthful feedback about these people, just the same as, they rely on the FTO officers to say, hey, I'm assigning these 5 to your shift. These 4 are rock solid, ready to go. Shouldn't have any problems. The 5th person, she's a little bit introverted. We need to break her out of her shell. Feedback is definitely integral. But yeah, I mean, we basically have the same style program as what they have there.
Now, guys, this last part of the dialogue, I just want to present something. So I've been doing a lot of reading, and one of the readings come from Timothy R. Clark, The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety. And what that is basically is, you want people to be the best that they could be, and you want to make sure that they feel safe in their environment to do so. So how he explains it is basically, vulnerable. Basically you want to make sure that people feel included, which is in this case here, the facility. You want to make sure people are able to learn, which again is on the facility. And then in return, they should be able to contribute, and then eventually challenge the status quo. And he has it as defining the path to inclusion and then ultimately innovation. Now, with that said, he does talk about, coaching individuals, like, guiding them, teaching them critical thinking. I know that's something that's big with Russ. It may first start off as modeling, let me show you what I do. Then eventually I'll partner through you until you're able to do it on your own. But the one thing about what I want to discuss that's new is there's another thing when it comes to coaching and modeling. So if let's say I'm the rookie and Russ is teaching me how to do my job or how to step into the role of being a correctional officer, Russ is going to do what he can to model really good behavior. And Russ is going to do what he can to get me to be to get me to think critically about, what needs to be done, really maybe be very invested in the questions that I have to ask. And the reason why is Russ is going to eventually want me to take ownership of the work. Russ is going to not just want to, teach me the skill, but Russ is going to want to make sure that I am invested in what's being taught. And I think this is going to be very general right now, but I think it's something that we want to get the idea out there, is that when you have the new boots coming in, they're going to feel trapped right away, because the first couple of years, they're not going to really have any opportunities, because at this point, it's about learning the job. And to be honest with you, that makes sense. You just got the job. You got to learn it. Corrections is a job that's fluid, complex. I mean, there's a lot to learn. So having said that, usually 3 years is minimal. In some cases, it could be more, or sadly, out of desperation, it could be less right now. But having said that, 3 years should be enough to start giving you the experience, getting you in the right direction, and then you can kind of start to see what opportunities there may be once you've gained that level of time in, that experience. And again, you're talking about someone who is intentional in those 3 years of learning the job. So again, if they're connected to a good journeyman, that journeyman is going to keep them motivated, but more importantly, keep them invested. That's the key. That's why you got to have people with good influence, because the people that have good influence, that are doing things for the right reasons, I know for a fact they're going to sell buy-in. They're going to sell the importance of the profession. They're going to keep this person motivated. And the newer people want ownership, but they want ownership in something that has value, something that in their mind has purpose. But with ownership comes accountability. And one of the discussions he had on his channel, which really hit me to kind of bring this up here, is that there's 3 levels of accountability. One is task accountability, which is basically simple tasks that got to be done. The next is process accountability, which is basically all the tasks coming together to kind of, maybe show an overall function. And the last accountability is the outcome accountability. The outcome accountability is usually the higher level executive staff, or it's usually the people that oversee this, where they basically are able to now send this person forward. So with that said, for me, the rookies during their day-to-day have to progress towards something. They have the new generation. Like back in the day, we did the job, we learned. We really weren't too worried about what I did as an individual and how it affected the bigger picture. We could give 2 shits about that, but that's different today. These individuals want to know, what does this play out for in the long run? And if this is my aspiration, and if this is what I want to be, how does knowing this today matters? And a good person that trains next to them can translate that. You give me anybody, and I can connect them to any work that has to be done in the profession as something bigger that will help them, one, ownership, investment, but also see the bigger picture and how what that job is connects to that. But with that said, the first thing that they would progress towards is being accountable to individualized tasks that ultimately lead to the bigger picture of understanding that correctional role. So basically, maybe one day they focus on searches, or maybe for a week or 2, they focus on searches, and maybe they're with somebody who's really good at searches. And then maybe one day they focus on inmate, interacting with inmates, so let's say first 2 weeks they work with Russ, safety and security, Russ, that's guy. Maybe my 2 weeks interacting with inmates, dynamic of inmate, whatever it is. Maybe with Joe, whatever it is, leadership, whatever it is. And this is the generalized part. But the point is, we hold them to task. We hold them accountable to seeing the the need for those tasks, the importance of the task. We make sure that we transfer to them critical thinking, giving them the chance to ask questions and us answering those questions to keep them invested. And then we hold them accountable to those tasks, but we also show them how those tasks definitely connect to the higher level, which is a process. Now, granted, guys, I think this is something that is not being done that's needed. If you want to keep the rookies that are coming in today, they got to be able to see that even in the mundane task, the routine, it's leading towards something, even if it is something for them. Like, hey, after 3 years, you are now a journeyman. These are the things you've done that now have accomplished all these levels, and now you're able to be that journeyman. But having said that, I think in today's day and age, we just give them tasks with no significance, or we don't explain the significance, and then they just do it with nothing to progress towards. And then what happens is they feel trapped the first couple of years because they can't go anywhere, because there's not going to be any opportunities at that point. So they eventually say, screw it, I'm not progressing towards anything. It's like, even though we know we're teaching them for something, they don't see it. So they wind up leaving. So I was thinking, in accordance with what they were trying to spell out, is if you can kind of teach them the importance of what the tasks are and have them progress towards something, give them the ownership, hold them accountable to those tasks, and then eventually lead them towards a higher level process, then they wind up reaching that journeyman level. So that when you come in, you're aiming in those first 3 years to be that correctional officer journeyman. And then it's a matter of how do we break down the tasks that have to be done in such a meaningful way that, one, allows for what we expect from every correctional officer, from the lowest level to the highest level, but also what's allowed at that specific facility that needs to be done. So they become a journeyman that kind of has an understanding of what it takes to be a correctional officer, but can really truly be effective within that facility. I'm going to start with Russ here, because I know there was a lot I just said, Russ, but when you said apprentice to me, I wind up looking back at those videos, and I said, well, for me, I always see an apprentice as someone that is going towards something. And don't forget, I mean, obviously you still learn, even as a journeyman, you're still learning. But with that said, when you said apprentice, I said, wait a second, that means there's progress. So why are we not doing something more structured with the rookies when they're coming in that can identify the importance behind each task in an effort to make them that journeyman?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's one of the beauties of having a program that has a metric attached to it that allows you to show someone, hey, yes, you have achieved this. With having achieved things like that, there should be some bonuses. At the end of it, maybe that's the point at which someone is eligible to apply to be on the transportation team, or apply to be on CERT, or apply to be a correctional counselor, or any of those other things. Once you've achieved that lowest rung, there should be, other rungs and other rewards along the way. And I think that, that's the base level. Journeyman, journeyman can be highly experienced, but it's also, the level at which, other things can stem forward from. And so that's what I would hope that, this new generation would look forward to is, hey, at the end of this journeyman thing, I can do something else. I can apply for, some of the specialized things, maybe honor guard, and other things that keep them interested and invested and seeing value in what they're doing. So when you have value added benefits to that, that really does speak to the whole retention thing, at least in my opinion.
No, and Russ, think about what you just said. I agree. I mean, what if this is the reason why I had this discussion is, one, we know that you got to connect them to the right person. The right person is going to keep them engaged, get that critical thinking going, and then ultimately, basically see the better ways for this person to connect to the simple task. So eventually they can wind up understanding the greater role. And I think for anybody that's watching this video that may be thinking about, some level of keeping those rookies coming in, I think they have to progress towards something. And I think if they're not going to get those opportunities right away, which they really, you need to have at least 3 years of intentional learning to really start being eligible for these other opportunities. But with that said, when the moment they come in, they should know that they're progressing towards that journeyman. Think about it. I know for me, before I would, if I'm a person that's, wants to complete stuff before I move forward, I'm not going to want to, step into something until I completed this first. I want to be able to complete this journey. Once I'm done, what's next? Because that's pretty much what the new generation is. It's what's next, what's next, what's next. So you got to keep them, keep them engaged so they know not to ask that question until you're done with this first. Don't ask what's next until you're done with this first. So, and maybe I'll ask Joe this. Maybe for the people that are watching this, maybe in that course of the 3 years, they can develop that matrix system or something like that, that these are the areas that in order for you to become that journeyman as a correctional officer outside of the specifics of your facility, because obviously each facility has different jobs, these are the areas that you are going to have to reach some level of credibility in. And out of curiosity, Joe, and then I'll go back to Russ, what would be, in the course of the 3 years, what would be some areas that you would spread out for in training?
Well, the rookies, they spend a lot of time on searches and things of that nature. For me, I would like to spread out and kind of encompass their critical thinking skills, observation skills. I want them to observe, offender movement, offender body language, kind of give them the conception of knowing when to intervene when something's just not right. Give them that gut instinct, to trust the gut. If something's not right, it usually it's not. I want them to have a better understanding of what to do in the event of anything, a fight, an emergency, a medical crisis, a mental crisis. I want to develop their skills over time so they know how to handle different situations as they come along. I think, learning how to pass search, that's kind of a rudimentary, basic skill that we stomp into the ground, having them do. I would also prefer them, especially during like physical confrontations where, you're having to cuff up, multiple offenders. I want them to be comfortable with the tools of the trade. I want them to be comfortable with everything that's assigned to them tool wise. You got some people that are scared to use some of the tools that we give them, whether it be a radio, handcuffs, a can of carry on person chemical agents, whatever the case is. But there's a lot of things that you can kind of develop over the course of 3 years to make a person a better officer.
I love that. What's your thoughts on that, Russ?
He's right. When we look at the things that, we're having them do, we have to, really, I think better structure it in a way, for lack of a better terminology. But we also want to, find new ways to really, stimulate that learning. Drills are a great way. I always wanted people to, be the first one. Hey, yeah, if somebody's out there and they're going to do a drill somewhere, and we need to send a representative, send me. I want to go down there. I want to have a chance to be able to get my feet wet in some new techniques or hone old ones. A lot of the stuff we do, a lot of our skills can be perishable, especially if we're not necessarily facing riots every day. And we haven't done riot control in a while, and you have to sit there and think, oh, great, now an actual riot is happening and I'm not as proficient as I should be. But these are ways that we can, really kind of, bring the young pups along, so to speak, is to keep them interested in things by letting them, gain new skills, polish old skills, and have them, be able to put themselves into a position where soon or sooner or later, they're going to be the ones bringing people along and teaching their skills backwards and down toward the new people coming in, because that's the point at which you go from journeyman to master.
Yeah, and ultimately that's the goal. I mean, obviously, I think John Maxwell says it best. First, you show the person the way, then you're alongside them, then they do it on their own, and then eventually they begin to train others. I mean, that's kind of keeps the legacy going. And I think sometimes people forget that look backwards or that look down. But again, guys, I mean, for me, I would push in for some level of inmate interaction, maybe working with the other departments. I mean, there's just so many factors that could play out that actually, and to be honest with you guys, just to let people know, it goes way beyond just running and responding to codes. I know a lot of people think, well, how do you have experience? How many codes have you ran? There's a lot more when you decide to move up and decide to run a prison. Don't get me wrong, it's needed, but there's a lot more than just being successful at cell extractions when it comes to running a prison. Because to be honest with you, the cell extraction is the last resort. So I think I just, wanted to put this idea out there. I think there is some hope that we could create a program in which they could progress towards something. And this way that would keep them invested, because they know at the end it gives them something that they could be proud of, something that they accomplish. And by the time they accomplish it, now the other opportunities start to open. Because as I said, when you start to ask them what it is that they want to do, and sometimes it's not so much about the function, but what they believe that higher level function could accomplish. And it's more about the greater impact. So I don't know. I by the way, guys, I thought this was a great dialogue. I think there's so much involved with recruitment and retention, and to be able to see it as one transition, to be able to know that, what we're bringing in is a new batch, and how do we now, one, invite them to recruitment, but then also keep them once they get into the facility, and where's that responsibility? The responsibility is on us. Recruitment has to adapt, and so does the facility. I mean, right now it's like, oh, well, recruitment's given us this. And no, recruitment made adaptations to get people here. Now you got to go ahead, see what that potential is, and make some changes yourself. And it's funny, though, one last thing, because we always have this blame game culture. When people feel that the rookies are leaving this profession really quick, a lot of them may blame recruitment, saying, it's basically what they're being taught and all this other stuff, whatever it is. And I remember when I was a rookie and I came in, the first thing people told me was, forget everything I learned at the academy. You're going to start new here. So what's going on? Where's that same thought? I'm just saying, hypothetically, it's like we always want to blame. It's like, okay, so now because you're not getting the person you want, now you want to blame who's giving them to you. And one last thought, guys. Truly, if we want to have a successful recruitment to retention, the pass off, who are we passing them to, matters. Most of the people that are leaving this profession may not always be leaving for better opportunities. They may be leaving because they don't want to be us. They don't want to be disgruntled or whoever you're connecting them to. Imagine you're coming in expecting this family environment, these great things about this profession, and you go through recruitment and you make it through the academy, and then you get handed off to the most disgruntled individual who now you're going to have to spend the next 25 years with. I don't want to be that person. I'm out. So who you pass it off to truly matters, because in my mind, the retention effort is a lot harder than the recruitment effort. The retention effort is long-term. The recruitment is just going to try to cultivate them to make them ready for the long-term commitment. But you have to keep them motivated to keep them in the long term. So in my mind, retention is great, but that's the smallest piece of the puzzle. Recruitment is great, but that's the smallest piece of the puzzle. The bigger piece is once they're passed over to you, and how do you keep them motivated to stay in? So all the recruitment does is get you the momentum you need. It's your job to keep it running long term. Joe, you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yeah, for the ones that have the full recruitment to the retention program on their facilities, which, nowadays most facilities do. I know back in the days, we had academies in another part of the state, and we would get the officers from that part of the state, and it was kind of a culture shock for them. But for those of y'all that have the recruitment to retention, the ability to have recruitment to retention within your own facility, man, lock onto that with everything you got, because it's the only thing that you have that's going to keep your people there. It's the only chance that you got to cultivate people and make them good bosses. For the FTOs and the mentors and the shift supervisors, when you get these people, when you get those recruits in, these rookies in, don't put them with shitty people that have a shitty outlook on their job, shitty outlook on the agency, that are substandard in their duties and are just lazy, and I'm not saying you have to put them with a veteran officer. I mean, I put recruits with, officers on a duty post that have only been there 8 months, but because of the way they handle themselves, the way they take pride in their profession, the way they do their job, the way, their professionalism with their coworkers and the offender population, I put those rookies with those short-time officers. We need to make sure that we get the right people in the right places, because that makes all the difference in the world. It does no good to spend all this time and energy on recruiting somebody if we're going to put them with somebody who's salty and has a shitty outlook on everything. So make sure you got the right people in the right places in order to help, keep your retention levels up.
Yeah, because it's really the influence that is when you're not around. Because if you set Joe mentioned something, I just want to piggyback on. If you set good influence at the very beginning, and then you partner them next to someone who's going in the opposite direction, that the rookie is going to switch, because they're not ready to deal with that level of resistance from the senior staff. So you really got to have someone on their side who can keep them motivated, but also has the proper influence. Hey, Russ, anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yeah, I think that for those of you out there that may be in positions of power, be it jails, prisons, whatever, look to start finding a way to, up your training game, upping your retention, upping your recruitment, and think about, making this part of it all.
And guys, someone just sent me this 10 things that require zero talent. So maybe this is what leans towards potential. So when you're getting that handoff, you want to be on time. They want people that make an effort. They want people that have high energy, people that have a positive attitude, people that are passionate, people that use good body language, people that are teachable, people that do a little extra, people that are prepared, and people that have strong work ethic. And that would be great to be able, as recruitment, to try to pass that off. As always, guys, the show is Tier Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.